Welcome back to this special program marking the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. In 1989, as this model shows, the Soviet Union was a superpower, both in terms of size and influence. During the 70s and early 80s, relations on either side of the East-West divide became so strained that there was a genuine fear of nuclear war as the United States and the Soviet Union built up stocks of nuclear missiles. One man was to change the Soviet Union and history. Mikhail Gorbachev came to power in 1985 with an agenda of reform. By mid-1989, Poland and Hungary had embraced multi-party elections. By November the 9th, 1989, Europe was irreversibly changing. I talked to Mikhail Gorbachev in Berlin earlier this week. Mr. President, it's great to see you again. Looking back to the great night of November the 9th, 20 years ago, on that day, how did you learn that the wall had started to fall that day? Who told you?
Well, I learned about it the next morning. My international experts told me the ambassador had called, the Soviet ambassador had called, and so I learned the next morning. I, of course, was quite aware about what was happening in Germany, in the GDR. I knew that Germans were all worked up, and that is because important things were happening in the world, the Velvet Revolutions, the democratic elections in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union and the United States had developed a friendly relationship, and also with others, and at that same time Germany was still like an island. There was no change happening in East Germany. Whereas in June '89, Chancellor Kohl and I, during our meeting when we were asked about the problem of German unification, we had said that this is a problem that would have to be addressed and resolved in the 21st century. After the celebration of the 40th anniversary of the GDR, when there was that torch parade where young people, instead of a celebration, they were carrying all those slogans at that time, and when rallies continued even afterwards, after that it became clear that the Germans did not want to wait, that they wanted to go all the way.
So, in general, would you say that you were glad or sad that the wall came down?
Well, I think I took it as something that happened, that inevitably had to happen, and I saw that the time for that had come. And let me add also that there was, of course, a big debate. The debate about what to do, what our position should be in the Soviet Union toward this. But also, of course, among the European leaders. Mitterrand, Thatcher took part in that debate. Mitterrand said at that time, we love the Germans so much that let them have two Germanys. And then, of course, Mrs. Thatcher, she rejected the idea of German unification. She thought that that would be bad for all. So those doubts were real. And it was a difficult process that led us to the final resolution. But the role of those European leaders and the, I think, important role, how they showed their worth as political leaders, was that they approached it in a realistic way. They felt that that was a really big issue that needed to be addressed, and so everyone participated in developing all the final decisions and the kind of decisions that would be acceptable to Germany's neighbors, that would not upset the European process, that would not upset European security. And this is what happened, and those are the documents, the agreements on Germany's unification that were ultimately signed. And all those European leaders signed those documents and those agreements. And so I believe that it is quite normal that it was not easy to adopt final decisions on this issue. This was a hard issue, but it was ultimately resolved in the best possible way.
At the same time, I think you've indicated on occasion that, in fact, the breakup of the USSR, of the Union, was not something that you had expected, and you didn't really welcome that. You would like the Union to stay in being, would you?
Да, конечно.
Indeed, that is so.
Но здесь причины все внутренние.
But the reasons for the breakup of the Union were all internal, were all
Очень
domestic.
острая борьба политическая. И в самом высшем
There was a severe political battle, and so some people wanted to take advantage of it, including the leaders of some republics within the Union. However, before the attempted coup in August 1991, most of the republics were for the preservation of the Union, and therefore it was possible to preserve it. We even set the date to sign a new Union treaty. But before that signing could take place, some people, including some leaders close to me, organized a coup against me, and that scuttled the signing of that new Union treaty. So they were, of course, saying that they wanted to preserve the Union, that they organized the coup in order to preserve the Union. That's what they say. That brought about the destruction of the Union, and what they did, they were doing in order to stick to their high positions, because they wanted to continue as before. They wanted to continue to benefit from the old system, which was good to them.
And so, in general, the great thing is, looking at the headlines of newspapers and so on, your place in history is secure, and that history is going to call you the man who changed the world. That's a great legacy to have, isn't it?
Я так считал, что история — это дама капризная.
I've always thought that history was a very fickle lady.
No, history will be faithful in your case. Thank you so much for doing this and finding the time to do this. As ever, it's a privilege.
Когда у нас появляется...
When you feel you need to talk, let me assure you that I'll always make time, I'll always find the minutes in order to talk.
Mikhail Gorbachev, former leader of the Soviet Union. In a moment, I'll be speaking to film star and musician David Hasselhoff. Sounds surprising in this particular program, but he has a unique perspective on the fall of the Berlin Wall.